Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast, connecting the opaque world of food startups.
Okay, we are live with episode number 53. Well, I am preparing right now for a US trip for sales and customer visits. I'm incredibly excited for a number of reasons. One, it's a big jump for our business. And two, and this would actually be number one, is I'm maybe in Maryland and up and down the East Coast. It's kind of the best time of year to visit because we have the summer solstice coming up. So the sun's going to be out until 9:30 p.m. every night. It's warm. Everyone's happier. It's just a great time to be there. So I'm really excited to go up there and hang out. I'm actually going to meet up with a couple of listeners because they've reached out to me, and I'll be up in DC, Boston, New York, Baltimore, Philly, maybe Miami, but I don't know about Miami. But anyway, shoot me an email if you're going to be around. I'd love to meet up. Now, before we get into our guest today, I wanted to give you a quick health tip. There is an amino acid known as L-theanine, and it has a calming effect. And it's kind of like a calm energy. So if you're a coffee drinker or any other types of caffeine, you'll notice that caffeine, for a lot of people, if you drink too much of it, make you feel a little bit anxious and kind of give you an edge that you may or may not want, at least as you're coming down from it. But what I've found, this is anecdotally, and also a lot of supplements, if you ever looked at supplement stacks, or called like natural stacks, they usually will mix caffeine and L-theanine, the amino acid, together to give you the strength of caffeine plus the L-theanine kind of calms you down and gives you this calming energy. And for me, it's been really great for working or just reading or playing the ukulele, whatever. So what I do, I'll still have my daily cup of coffee, but I've made some iced teas, natural iced teas with the green tea, black tea, oolong tea. Also found in moringa, which is like a superfood that is pretty popular in the US right now. And it comes from tree leaves, but the moringa bark is also popular and it has a lot of iron and calcium. Anyway, so I'll have some type of tea or moringa, glass of that after I have a cup of coffee, and the energy's been great. So take a look, and maybe it's something for you. I'm going to link to a NIH study on L-theanine, a natural constituent in tea, and its effect on mental state. So guys, let's get right into the episode. Today I have Hungry Harvest on. Evan Lutz is taking the time to speak with me via Skype. His partner, John Zamora, is not going to be on, but I actually found out he's from Colombia, which is a really small world since I'm here in Bogota right now. Anyway, this is a very special episode for me because you may or may not know my alma mater is University of Maryland. And this is a University of Maryland startup. These guys started on campus, at 20, 21 years old, and now they're still young. They're like 23, 24. They look on the 30 under 30 track, I guess. And Evan's going to tell me about his business. Hungry Harvest is a surplus produce delivery service, right? So that's just taking food that is already going to be wasted, right, and thrown out, but it's perfectly good. It's just misshaped or things that don't really matter in terms of taste and nutrition, and delivering it in the DC area and the Baltimore area for now. So again, I love the concept. There's so much food that goes to waste, so we can recycle this in some way or the other. The Washington Post did an article on them, and Fruit Cycle, it's like an dried apple startup doing the same thing. You're recycling food that's going to go to waste. It's an amazing concept, great social entrepreneurship, and they're, best of all, they're Terps. So I'm going to bring on Evan Lutz right now. Today we have Evan Lutz of Hungry Harvest. They work with surplus produce. It's a delivery service right now in the DC area and Baltimore metropolitan area. Evan is also a fellow Terp. I don't know if you guys know, but I went to University of Maryland. So this is the first Terp, and hopefully not the last we have on our podcast. Now, Evan, can you give us a background? How did you guys come up with the idea for Hungry Harvest?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I started working for an organization called Food Recovery Network on my senior year of college when I was at the University of Maryland. And they're an organization that takes leftover dining hall food that's prepared, like pastas, pizzas, stuff like that, from various dining halls on college campuses, and uses student volunteers to go ahead and donate that food to soup kitchens, homeless shelters, food banks in the area. They're a nonprofit organization spread over about 150 colleges across the country currently today. And when I was working for them about a year and a half ago, the co-founder and executive director and I, both the entrepreneurial type, and we were approached by another nonprofit who recovered raw agricultural products, surplus produce, and they were looking for a revenue stream as well. Usually they just work with farmers and wholesalers to go ahead and donate whatever they get. But they were looking for a revenue stream to start actually selling this surplus product. And our biggest questions were, A, is this stuff going to be right for the compost bin, or can you actually market it and sell it? So we started working with a supplier called the Mid-Atlantic Gleaning Network, and I basically set up a farm stand right outside of our Stamp Student Union and sold surplus produce to faculty, staff, and students. And when I got the first shipment, I asked the question, is this stuff really surplus? Is this stuff really stuff that would go to waste? Honestly, all of it, except for 1 or 2 cucumbers or apples, was grocery store quality. It was unbelievable quality, and I couldn't believe it was going to get thrown away. And so we just bought this surplus produce for about 50% cheaper than what we would buy First's produce for. And it was just as good quality, and the students loved it. Everybody loved what we were doing, and we hit it off so well that we realized we could buy low, sell high, have a great social mission, have a great impact on the world. So let's do this. You know, I always wanted, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Not just an entrepreneur, but a social entrepreneur. One that started a business that not only made money, but also helped people as well. And so I knew that when this pilot program, which was called the Recovered Food CSA, when it started to work out, I said, you know what, this is what I want to be doing after school. Morphed that into Hungry Harvests, and here we are today, where we take the same products, work with a lot of other suppliers, and start to deliver to homes and businesses across the DC and Maryland area.
Great. Now, Evan, amazing story. So it really did start on the campus in College Park. Now, I want to have you explain something to the listeners. You said CSA, Community Supported Agriculture Program. Now, can you give us like an overview of that, and what are the advantages of this with respect to farmers and consumers?
Of course. So CSA's Community Supported Agriculture is a concept that's been around for a long time, a very, very long time, decades at least. So it's really when this local farm movement started back up. Back 100, 150 years ago, people on the East Coast didn't know what a banana tasted like, right? Or didn't know what a mango tasted like. And since then, since the globalization, if you will, of produce, everybody just shops at the grocery store and can pick up whatever they want from all over the world. Unfortunately, that's left out the local farmers, and the local farmers, the small farmers, were forgotten. And so this concept started back up in like the 70s or 80s of CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. And this is when the local community, say the Baltimore community, will buy into a farmer's crop, say that's right outside of Baltimore, and pay him up front, right? Say pay between $400 and $600 for the entire season. This will allow the farmer to then pay off all the debts and all the initial expenses that he has at the beginning of the growing season. And in return, each of those paying customers, or members, as we call them, will get a share of whatever the farm produces. And usually it's like a produce box. You'll get a variety of whatever the farm produces for that week. So that's a really new, it's a relatively new concept. It's on the up and coming. But the problem is the way CSAs are set up, it's a hassle, plain and simple. You have to spend all this money up front, $400 to $600. You have to go somewhere to pick it up. Usually you'll get like a lot of beets or a lot of potatoes or a lot of apples, just stuff that you wouldn't really want to use, and it's not really tailored towards normal consumers. So we're taking this concept of the CSA, playing around with it, and tailoring it towards the mass market of people, everyday people who eat produce and want to save time, want to save money, want to give back to the community. And so we're taking this concept, making people, or allowing people to pay weekly instead of upfront, doing home delivery, and as well, we're tailoring the bags towards our actual families and consumers, so they're not getting just a bunch of beets that they don't know what to do with. They're getting a tailored bag that will allow them to have a really good variety, so they can have produce throughout the week.
Great. And I want to make another note here. So listeners may or may not be aware, I think we touched on it once in a previous episode. Now, Evan, the free trade agreement between US and Colombia was passed, I guess, a year or two ago. And so what Evan's saying about local farmers, it's a really cogent point because you have no idea that economies of scale in farming can also sometimes make it impossible to, even for a local farmer that's 50 miles from the store, can be anywhere close on price. And I'll just give you an example. In Colombia, there's a huge trade deficit now after the fair trade agreement, and dairy, chicken, a lot of Colombian farmers are just being wiped out because even though they're close here to the grocery stores, the US has such big industries that they have no chance of competing. So it's really helping the little guy, right? Now, Evan, you just mentioned it here. I want to just touch on it one more time. Walk us through this process. If I'm in Baltimore or Silver Spring or College Park and I say, all right, let's subscribe for the $25 harvest on hungryharvest.net. I sign up. When and how do I get the produce?
It really, honestly, couldn't be simpler from a consumer's perspective, right? From the back end, we've been able to implement technology into our website that allows it for the consumer to sign up within 3 minutes, right? So you go on our website, hungryharvest.net, click sign up. There'll be a list of different zip codes. You click your zip code or apartment building or whatever. Click whichever option you like. We have 3 different options. One's mini for $15, one's full for $25, and one's super for $35. Click whichever option you want, enter your information, and click you're finished. It takes between 3 and 5 minutes. A bag of produce will come to your door on that following Sunday or Monday if you're signing up for business delivery. And the cool part about it is you only have to go on our website once for 3 to 5 minutes. Enter your information. That's it. We will charge your card every week and bring you a bag of food every week. And this is really, really convenient from the consumer's perspective. So they don't have to go online and order. They don't have to go online every week. It just comes to their door. And this also does something really, really cool that is kind of like a hidden value proposition. So, a lot of our consumers like to eat healthy, and a lot of the mass market agrees that eating healthy is better. However, some people are just lazy. Some people can't afford it. If you're sitting at home on a Saturday and just don't feel like cooking, you might, order carry out, order delivery or something like that might not necessarily be healthy. Well, with Hungry Harvest, that a delivery of fresh produce is coming the next day, right? So this allows you to be healthy while being lazy, right? So you can sit at home on your butt and still be healthy. It's a really great value proposition from the consumer's perspective.
Great. And I actually, here in Bogota, I almost always do delivery just because, just the amount of time it takes to go there, pick everything out. So delivery is key to this business, it seems. And I guess the question for you, roughly, compared to like another food delivery service, like taking the $25 or $35 harvest, in terms of price, to a similar set of produce, how do you guys stack up?
Yeah, we're very comparable to grocery store prices. Depends on week to week. Some days, some weeks we'll have where you can buy grocery store stuff for a little bit more than what you're paying for Hungry Harvest, or some weeks it's a little bit less. Either way, it's pretty comparable, but we've got all this other social value associated with it, right? We're delivering, most of it's local. We're reducing food waste. We're feeding hungry families, supporting local farmers, creating jobs for those getting back on their feet. So we really have a lot of value proposition that's going along with our weekly delivery. There are plenty of other weekly delivery services out there, none of which use seconds, none of which make matching donations, and really none of which have the social value that is really associated with our products.
Yeah, and listeners, in case you haven't seen the website yet, and Evan mentioned this, but there's nothing wrong with this produce. It's the same as what you'd see in the grocery store. It just might be a apple with a different shape or a tomato with a different shape. And I don't know, I always buy organic free range eggs. And one thing I notice is that all the eggs are different colors and different sizes. And I've probably done this for 4 years now. So if I see eggs and they all look the same, to me, that's actually weird and unnatural. So I actually prefer,
right.
Produce should look that way. It shouldn't all look the same, right?
It's a big problem. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's a big problem. We always one quote, not everything grows all shiny and perfect like you see in the grocery store with a sticker on it. And when you go down the aisle of apples, when you go down the aisle of eggplants and oranges, everything's the exact same. And we've grown so used to it that it's like, this is okay. But when you think about it from a larger perspective, you have to think about, how do the grocery stores get the fruit so perfect? How do they do that? Well, the fact is they don't, right? Everything that doesn't fit that mold gets thrown away. And that really doesn't come into play when you're walking down the fruit aisle in a grocery store. You don't really think about that. You don't really notice it. It's really a shame that the grocery stores and the wholesalers and even the farmers at some point have kind of hit in this other side of ugly produce that just gets tossed because they think under the presumption that fruit, because it doesn't look right or because it doesn't fit one certain mold, should get thrown away and isn't going to get bought. So it's really ridiculous when you think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, and so it's like the grocery stores have kind of formed the way we think how a fruit or shape should look. Kind of similar, like, it's kind of a loose metaphor, but like a lot of times I know models, right? Like a lot of time women complain because like models are always photoshopped and they're rail thin, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like a similar comparison. Okay, let's go a little bit more into logistics. So first off, there's like, and you mentioned this, but it's like 20 to 40% of produce doesn't even make it to the grocery store. So how many billions of pounds are wasted each year, Evan, of fresh produce?
It's 6 billion pounds. 6 billion.
That's 1 pound for every person on Earth.
Right. Wow. Just about. It's unfathomable to think about it. You hear that statistic, and it's just like, wow, that's just a statistic. But when you visualize it, that's enough to fill up 4 NFL-sized stadiums. And you think about, why people are so mesmerized with NFL stadiums. At least I am. It's because you're sitting there with like 60 to 70 to 80,000 other people, and just this like vast thing that you're just watching, right? So imagine you're sitting at the top of that, and instead of 60,000 people in that stadium, it's what, 1.5 billion pounds of produce, apples, oranges, broccoli, zucchini, all perfectly fresh stuff, like not rotting, not composting, not in a dumpster somewhere, perfectly fresh stuff, just filling that entire stadium to the brim. I mean, it's unfathomable when you try to think about that. And the other side of the picture is equally as unfathomable, that a sixth of our country, of the United States, is food insecure and is hungry on a daily basis. That's 50 million Americans. And you always see these commercials about hungry kids in South America and hungry kids in Africa and all these problems going on worldwide. Hunger in America isn't really addressed that much. I mean, it's 1 out of every 6 people. 1 out of 6. It's not like it's 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20, 1 out of 100. Like, it's very rare. No, it's extremely common that somebody is hungry. That somebody you're riding the bus with or somebody you see walking down the street, 1 out of every 6 people is hungry. While we have these 4 NFL-sized stadiums filled to the brim with perfectly good products, suppliers think that people won't buy because it doesn't look perfect, right? It's just an absolutely ridiculous perspective to look at it at. And it's kind of, when you look at it from a big picture, it's really upsetting when you think to the fact that our society has allowed this to get to the point where this is acceptable, and it shouldn't be. I mean, we should be all actively doing something to solve a problem, to solve this massive problem. If you went to one of our ancestors' great-great-grandparents 100 years ago and said, oh yeah, in 100 years, the same society that you helped build, right? That society is wasting 6 billion pounds of produce a year while 50 million Americans are going hungry, they would slap us across the face, surely. They'd say, where did it go wrong? What happened where it went wrong, where that was okay, right? There was no type of waste ever in the past. There was no type of waste that was this quantity and quality in the past, in the past 50, 100 years. It's really absurd.
Wow. And okay, so in these 6 billion pounds, is this worldwide or just in the U.S.?
This is just the United States.
Oh my God. I thought that was worldwide.
Yeah, this is just the United States. And most of that 6 billion pounds, like I said, it's actually pre-retail. So you don't even see it going to waste or in restaurants or in grocery stores. Everything's thrown out, in the packing houses and in the wholesalers, on the farms even. And most of that waste is before it even touches consumers.
So it's really interesting, this stigma. Now, the guest, Tynan, who we had on 2 weeks ago, fantastic episode about nutrition. So he kind of mentioned, one thing, I don't know if he wants me sharing this, but I'm just going to share it anyway because it's pretty cool. He lived in San Francisco for a long time, and he went to this organic tea shop, and they would have a lot of food. And he was friends with the waiters there. And there's something that I always thought about, Evan, where it's the waiters, someone would leave and they would leave like half their plate. So you'd be like, hey, can I have it? And I always felt like ashamed to ask people like that at a restaurant. But it's just like one of those stigmas that we have. Like, why shouldn't you be able to ask if they're going to just take that plate and throw it away? Like, it's this whole mentality, right? Not just in produce, but in restaurants as well, where there's so much more waste. Like, why shouldn't you be able to have food that they're just going to throw away anyway?
Right. I agree. There's a negative stigma around recovered food or surplus produce or anything like that. That's part of our mission as well, is getting rid of that negative stigma. And it's really, food is food. I mean, if people found out how many hands had been on their apple that they see in a grocery store, that's all perfect and shiny and everything. If people have found out where that has been and like how many hands has been on that piece of product individually, people would have a very tough time actually eating it. Food is food. It really is, whether you can eat it or not. So
right on. Now, obviously, I guess you mentioned before the episode that you guys are in like a refrigerated trailer. Can you tell us some logistical problems? Are you guys looking for quality control certification? What are some of the biggest obstacles that you guys have faced so far?
Sure. Well, I mean, starting a food business is very tough. And obviously it's very capital intensive. It's very hard to get started. It's hard to get suppliers, get customers willing to pay you. It's very tough business to start out in. But we think, we have a good enough product and good enough value proposition that we can be successful. So right now we're using a refrigerated trailer, which is good for our purposes right now, but in the future, we'll obviously need to expand. We're currently actually raising around a seed funding, and we're actively trying to seek investors that are not only, willing to give us their money and their effort, but also willing to spend time with us in terms of vision, mission, and purpose. We really want investors that are aligned with our purpose, so we can all be on the same page in terms of moving forward. We're trying to actively find a new warehouse somewhere on the 95 corridor. For those that aren't familiar with this area, it's in between Baltimore and Washington. That's where a lot of the produce is distributed out of for the East Coast, and there's a lot of surplus there. So it's going to be close to our suppliers, close to our customers. Most of our customer base is in DC and Baltimore right now, but we absolutely see this expanding throughout the entire country.
All right, here's what I want to know, or what I'd like to hear, I guess, is because I know I'm starting to get involved with the fresh produce as well, and at the MFCA or like the big produce warehouses, et cetera, or even the farms. Like, what's your pitch? If you have to give like a 15-second pitch to someone that's working with fresh produce that's never thought about recycling it, how do you pitch them?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you this. I'll preempt this by saying, with a farmer or supplier, like, we're never giving a 15-second pitch. It's always a several week, if not month, ordeal to try and get them to supply us. But if I had to get it down to 15 seconds, I would say, listen, it's okay that you waste food. I understand it. It just happens. But what I'm going to do is offer you a proposition to not waste that food. I run a business called Hungry Harvest, where we buy surplus produce, we sell half of it, and we donate half of it. So it's going to hungry people, and it's going to mass consumers as well. We'll pay you a less than market rate for your surplus product that you wouldn't normally sell otherwise. So you're getting some money in your pocket, and just the knowledge that your product is actually going to people and to hungry families as well, instead of just to the dumpster. And the reason I start that off with the notion that it's okay that you're wasting food, because a lot of the suppliers, they do waste food and they think it's okay because it's such a usual, at this point in the business, it's such like a normal occurrence that they just have surplus and just throw it away because to make room for other stuff coming in, or they throw it away because it doesn't look right or whatever, because they're not on the front lines and don't realize that there are all these hungry people and that there are actually outlets where they can sell that food. One of the big problems of why they waste that food is because they don't have an outlet to sell it. And if they don't have an outlet to sell it, then what are they supposed to do with it? They can't donate it. They'll take too many resources, right? We get them started off by saying, it's okay. We know you waste food. It's a problem we're actively trying to solve, and here's how we'll help you solve it.
Great. So it's not like you're starting out, not like in a condescending way. Like, listen, this is normal. It's not like we're criticizing you. We have a solution. Okay.
Right.
And Evan, I want to move on to the last question here, because, on your website, I looked at the job section, and you're looking for brand ambassadors, right? Which, let's say someone's in Philadelphia or another city. What are you guys looking for in a brand ambassador, and how far are you guys trying to expand in terms of East Coast and the United States?
Sure. So brand ambassadors, main way we get customers actually is through building ourselves out in the community. And one of those ways is we throw various events and use email listservs and stuff like that. But one of the main ways we build ourselves out in the community is through brand ambassadors, and these are the people that represent our brands throughout a specific geographic area. So they'll go to different businesses, they'll go to different nonprofits, they'll speak at different community events and different town hall meetings and throw events and stuff like that in order to get us new customers. The way our business works is we're obviously mission driven. We're very focused on the problem of food justice and food waste and hunger. And the way we solve it is through sales, right? When a customer signs up and when we make that sale, that's what makes the whole engine run. That's what allows us to donate. That's what allows us to support local farmers and reduce food waste. And these brand ambassadors are the people that actually go out. We give them the resources and the tools to go get customers. It's their job to go get them. And in terms of expansion for the East Coast, we think we can get at least cover the entire Northeast pretty much with one warehouse. That'll be, like I said, in between DC and Baltimore. But eventually we see between 6 and 10 warehouses across the country that'll aggregate and sort surplus produce at various points and then go out and deliver them to individual homes and businesses in various areas, in Chicago and LA and San Francisco and Texas, all over the country. We really think this is an initiative that can take off. That's going to actually make a pretty big dent in the 6 billion pounds that goes to waste every year, hopefully.
Fantastic answer. I like where you guys are going. We definitely want to support you. So we definitely on Twitter, whatever, we'll happily just share your progress. Now, listeners, you guys can find them online at hungryharvest.net. Now, Evan, one final question, maybe the most important question. This year, I guess 2015, 2016 Terps basketball, will we make the Final Four?
Yes. Simple answer is yes.
All right, good. I think so too. So Evan and I are both on record here saying it. This is going to be published in mid-June. So hopefully we're right. All right, Evan, thanks so much for coming on, and you've been a great guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to add one more thing. If people want to get more involved with Hungry Harvest and support what we're doing, shoot an email to info@hungryharvest.net, and we'll be glad to set up a time to talk.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.